Hello there, sleepyheads. Settle in and cozy up. Tonight, we're venturing back into the ancient world, to a time of powerful gods and even more powerful prophecies. Our story tonight is about a creature of immense strength and a destiny both feared and fated, Fenris the wolf. We'll learn how this monstrous wolf came to be and the desperate measures the gods took to contain his destructive power. So dim the lights, snuggle under your blankets, and let's begin. But just before we begin, if our stories help you drift off, please tap the like and subscribe buttons. In my channel, you can find Norse, Greek, and Egyptian mythology tales. Comment and tell me which myth you'd like to hear next. Your support helps us craft and shape more calm stories for fellow night owls. And now let your shoulders sink softly into the mattress and your mind drift into today's tale. Asgard, the Golden Realm, lay peaceful. Its gilded spires pierced the soft, eternal twilight. A gentle hum filled the air. It was the sound of contentment. The Aesir, the gods of this place, lived in quiet harmony. Their laughter echoed through grand halls. Their days unfolded in serene succession. But even in this tranquil haven, shadows stirred. A subtle unease began to creep in. It was a whisper, ethereal and cold. The Norns, ancient weavers of fate, had spoken. Their pronouncements were rarely joyful. Their words now held a chilling resonance. Dark prophecies drifted through the air. They settled like frost on the hearts of the gods. Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, was foretold. A cataclysmic end loomed on the horizon. This terrible destiny was woven into the fabric of time. The Norns saw all, they revealed some. Among these dire predictions, one stood out. It spoke of a monstrous wolf. This creature would rend the very sky. It would devour the sun and moon. Its howl would signal the end of days. This prophecy sent shivers through Asgard. Odin, all-father of the gods, felt the weight of it. His single eye, wise and ancient, grew troubled. He often sat upon his throne, deep in thought. His ravens, Hugin and Munin, perched near him. They whispered secrets of the world. They brought him news from afar. His concern deepened with each passing day. The whispers of the wolf grew louder. He consulted with Mimir's head. Mimir's head lay submerged in a well. It held ancient wisdom. It knew many hidden truths. Odin journeyed to the roots of Yggdrasil. There, Mimir's well bubbled gently. The water shimmered with ancient magic. Odin carefully lowered Mimir's head. He spoke his questions softly. He sought guidance in this time of dread. "Tell me, Mimir," Odin's voice was low. "Is this prophecy truly unchangeable?" The water rippled around the head. A faint glow emanated from it. Mimir's eyes, though sightless, seemed to perceive all. Mimir's voice was like distant thunder. It rumbled from the depths. "Fate is a river, All-Father. Its course is set. Yet, eddies and currents can form. They might alter its flow slightly." Odin listened intently. He absorbed every word. The wolf, Mimir, Odin pressed on. "Is its coming inevitable?" Mimir's voice grew somber. A great wolf shall indeed rise. Its power will be immense, its hunger insatiable. It is a child of the shadows. Odin pondered Mimir's words. He felt a deep sense of helplessness. How could one fight against fate? Yet, he was Odin. He would not simply surrender. He would seek any possible path. Meanwhile, Loki moved through Asgard. He was the trickster god. His steps were light, almost imperceptible. A mischievous glint often danced in his eyes. He possessed a sharp mind. He loved to sow discord. Loki was a master of illusion. He changed forms with ease. He could be a hawk, a fish, a woman. His nature was unpredictable. He was neither wholly good nor wholly evil. He existed in the gray spaces. He heard the whispers of the wolf. He saw Odin's growing worry. A strange idea began to form. It took root in his cunning mind. He desired extraordinary offspring, children of immense power. Loki harbored a secret ambition. He wished to challenge the established order. What better way than through his lineage? He envisioned powerful progeny. They would shake the foundations of Asgard. They would embody his wild spirit. He considered his options carefully. He needed a partner, one who matched his own untamed nature, a being of strength and darkness. His thoughts drifted to Jotunheim. It was the realm of giants. Jotunheim was a stark contrast to Asgard. It was a land of jagged peaks. Icy winds howled through its valleys. Dark forests stretched for miles. It was a place of raw power. It was home to formidable beings. One giantess came to mind. Her name was Angerboda. She was a fearsome figure. Her eyes held ancient wisdom. Her heart was a tempest. She was known as the Hag of the Ironwood. Loki decided his course. He would journey to Jotunheim. He would seek out Angerboda. He would propose his audacious plan. He felt a thrill of anticipation. This union would be truly remarkable. He prepared for his journey in secret. He donned a cloak of shadows. He moved silently through the Bifrost. The rainbow bridge hummed beneath his feet. Its colors swirled around him. He stepped into the realm of giants. Jotunheim's air was biting cold. The landscape was desolate. Jagged mountains pierced the sky. Dark clouds perpetually hung overhead. Loki felt a strange exhilaration. This was a land of wild freedom. He sought out the ironwood. It was a forest of ancient trees. Their branches were gnarled and twisted. The wood was as hard as iron. Here, Angerboda made her home. She lived in a hidden cave. Loki transformed into a weary traveler. He approached her dwelling cautiously. A faint light flickered within. The air grew heavy with magic. He sensed her powerful presence. He knew he had found her. He called out her name softly. Angerboda, I seek an audience. His voice carried on the wind. A moment of silence followed. Then, a low growl echoed from the cave. It was a sound of warning. Angerboda emerged from the darkness. Her form was imposing. Her eyes glowed with an inner fire. Her hair was wild and dark. She carried herself with an air of immense power. She regarded Loki with suspicion. Who dares disturb my solitude? Her voice was deep and resonant. It echoed through the valley. Loki offered a deferential bow. He maintained his humble disguise. He spoke with practiced charm. I am but a wanderer, great Angaboda. I have heard tales of your wisdom. I seek counsel on a matter of great importance. He kept his true identity hidden. He knew she would see through him eventually. Angaboda studied him intently. Her gaze was piercing. She seemed to see into his very soul. A faint smile touched her lips. You are no mere wanderer, Loki of Asgard. Your trickery precedes you. Loki dropped his disguise. He stood before her, unmasked, his true form lean and cunning. You are astute, Angaboda. As expected, he met her gaze directly. He felt a spark of admiration. Why have you come to my realm? She asked. Her voice held a hint of amusement. Asgardians rarely venture here, unless they seek conflict. She gestured for him to enter her cave. Loki followed her inside. The cave was surprisingly cozy. A fire crackled in a hearth. Strange herbs hung from the ceiling. Ancient runes were carved into the stone walls. It was a place of powerful magic. He sat across from her. The firelight flickered between them. I have come for a unique purpose, Angaboda. I seek a partner, one who can match my spirit, one who desires powerful offspring. Angaboda listened, unmoving. Her expression was unreadable. And what kind of offspring do you envision, Loki? Her voice was calm. She seemed to anticipate his answer. Children of immense strength, Loki began. His voice grew passionate. Children who will shake the very foundations, beings of legend. They will be unlike any other. He leaned forward eagerly. Angaboda considered his words. A strange glint appeared in her eyes. You speak of power, Loki, but what of destiny? Do you know the fate of such children? Her question hung in the air. Loki paused. He thought of the Norn's prophecies. He thought of the wolf. He dismissed it quickly. He craved power above all else. Fate is a concept, Angaboda. We forge our own path. Angaboda chuckled softly. It was a dry, knowing sound. You are bold, low-key, and foolish, but I find your audacity intriguing. She rose and walked to a large cauldron. Steam rose from its depths. I have seen glimpses of the future, she said. Her voice grew more serious. Your children will indeed be powerful. They will bring great change, but not always as you desire. Loki felt a thrill. He ignored the veiled warning. He saw only the potential. Then you will join me, he asked. His voice was eager. He extended a hand towards her. Angaboda looked at his outstretched hand. She hesitated for a moment. Her gaze was distant. She saw visions of destruction. She saw the shadow of a great wolf. Yet, a strange curiosity compelled her. she desired powerful progeny too. She was a giantess. She yearned for greatness. This union with Loki, though dangerous, held immense promise. She took his hand. Her grip was strong. Their union was not one of tender love. It was a merging of wild forces, a meeting of cunning minds. It was a pact of ambition. They sought to create something extraordinary, something truly powerful. They spent time in the ironwood, under the cold Jotunheim sky. Their courtship was unconventional. It was a dance of wits, a clash of strong wills. They found a strange understanding. Angerboda was drawn to Loki's intellect, his daring spirit. Loki was captivated by her raw power, her ancient wisdom. They were two untamed beings, drawn together by a shared desire. Soon Angerboda conceived. The magic of their union was potent. The children grew quickly within her. They were destined to be formidable. They would be unlike any others. Their birth would shake the realms. The first was a wolf, a creature of immense size. Even in the womb, its power was evident. This was Fenrir, the wolf of prophecy, the one foretold by the Norns. Then came a serpent, a creature of vast length. It would encircle the world. This was Jörmungandr, the Midgard serpent. Its venom would poison the seas. Finally, a daughter was born. Her face was half beautiful, half corpse. She would rule over the dead. This was Hel, queen of the underworld. Her domain would be Niflheim. Loki watched with a strange pride. He saw the power in his offspring. He felt a surge of triumph. He had achieved his goal. He had created beings of legend. He had defied expectations. Angerboda, however, felt a deeper understanding. She knew the burden these children carried. She saw their terrible destinies. Her heart was heavy with foreboding. She knew the price of such power. The whispers of the wolf continued to grow. They echoed through Asgard. They now held a new, darker meaning. The prophecy was taking shape. The threat was becoming real. Odin felt the shift. He sensed a change in the air. A coldness crept into Asgard. He knew not its source, not yet, but he would soon discover it. The peace of Asgard was slowly eroding. The stage was set. The pieces were moving. The threads of fate were weaving. The birth of Fenrir marked a turning point, a point of no return. A new chapter had begun, a dangerous one. The gods of Asgard remained largely unaware. They lived in their golden halls. They enjoyed their serene existence. The shadows were gathering, unseen. The wolf's howl was still distant, but it was coming. Loki looked at his children with a sly smile. He saw their immense potential. He imagined the chaos they would sow. He felt a thrill of anticipation. He had unleashed forces that could not be contained. Angerboda watched him, her expression somber. She knew the truth. She knew the pain to come. She felt the weight of their destinies. She had played her part. Now, the world would feel the consequences. The wind howled through the ironwood. carried the scent of change. It carried the scent of destiny. The first beat of this tale was complete. The seeds were sown. The journey had begun. Within Jotunheim's shadowed valleys, a strange birth had occurred. Angerboda, a giantess of formidable magic, had brought forth a new life. It was a tiny creature at first, no bigger than her hand. Yet, even then, an unusual glint shone in its eyes. This was Fenrir, a wolf pup unlike any other. He was born amidst the frost-kissed peaks. The air was thin and sharp. Dark pine forests stretched endlessly. Here, away from Asgard's golden halls, Fenrir began his days. Angerboda watched him closely. She saw his peculiar nature immediately. Initially, Fenrir was a playful pup. He tumbled through the snow. His fur, dark as midnight, blended with the shadows. He chased snowflakes. He nipped at Angerboda's fingers. His sharp, tiny teeth were like needles. He was full of boundless energy, but his growth was astonishing. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Fenrir grew at an unnatural pace. He was not like other wolves. He was not like any creature. He grew larger and larger. Soon he outgrew his den. He outgrew the hollows he found. His paws became the size of boulders. His teeth became like daggers. His playful nips became powerful clamps. Angerboda felt a tremor of unease. His hunger was immense. He devoured whole carcasses. He needed more and more food. The giants struggled to feed him. Their hunting parties grew larger. Their efforts became more desperate. Fenrir's appetite was insatiable. His strength, too, was terrifying. He could rend ancient trees. He could split massive rocks. He could clear entire valleys. He did this with a single swipe of his paw. His power was boundless. It was frightening. The other giants began to fear him. They kept their distance. They whispered in low tones. They spoke of a monster. They spoke of a force. They spoke of something uncontrollable. Fenrir was no longer a pup. He was a colossal beast. His shoulders towered over the tallest giants. His breath was like a winter storm. His roar echoed through the mountains. It shook the very foundations of Jotunheim. The land trembled beneath his weight. Angerboda tried to soothe him. She tried to calm his wild spirit. She spoke to him in gentle tones. She offered him the largest meals. But Fenrir's eyes held a fierce light. It was a light of untamed power. He was too big for their halls. He was too strong for their chains. No binding could hold him. No cage could contain him. The giants knew this truth. They felt it in their bones. Fenrir was free. Rumors began to spread. They traveled across the icy wastes. They crossed the dark rivers. They reached the distant lands. They spoke of an enormous wolf. They spoke of a creature of nightmares. This wolf lived in Jotunheim. These whispers reached Asgard. They drifted through the golden gates. They entered the halls of the gods. Odin, the All-Father, heard them. His brow furrowed with concern. His mind turned to ancient prophecies. The Norns had spoken of a wolf. They had foretold a great destruction. They had warned of Ragnarok. This wolf would be a key player. This wolf would bring about the end. Odin remembered their words. He called a council of the Aesir. The gods gathered in Gladsheim. Their faces were grim. Their voices were low. They discussed the rumors. They spoke of the growing threat. Fenrir's name was on their lips. Thor, the mighty thunderer, gripped his hammer. He spoke of battle. He spoke of crushing this beast. Freya, with her golden tears, spoke of caution. She urged understanding. She urged peace. But Odin knew the prophecy. He knew the dire warnings. He knew the wolf's destiny. He paced the great hall. His single eye scanned the faces. He sought a solution. He sought a way to avert disaster. The gods debated for days. Their voices grew louder. Their arguments grew heated. Some suggested force. Others suggested trickery. No one had a clear answer. The problem of Fenrir loomed large. How could they contain such a creature? How could they bind such immense power? No known chain could hold him. No magic seemed strong enough. Fear began to creep into Asgard. It touched even the bravest hearts. Then a voice spoke. It was calm and clear. It cut through the clamor. It was Tyr, the god of war and justice. He was known for his courage. He was known for his unwavering honor. Tyr stepped forward. His gaze was steady. He looked at Odin. He looked at the other gods. He offered a different approach. He offered a bold, dangerous plan. We must approach him, Tyr said. His voice echoed softly. We must understand him. We must not meet him with force. A hush fell over the hall. The gods listened intently. Who among us, Odin asked, would dare to face him? His voice was heavy. Who would risk their life? The wolf was a horror. He was a terror. He was a force of nature. Tyr did not hesitate. I will, he declared. His hand rested on his sword hilt. I will go to Jotunheim. I will seek out Fenrir. A gasp went through the assembly. The gods were stunned. They looked at Tyr with awe. They looked at him with concern. This was a grave undertaking. This was a journey into great peril. But Tyr was resolute. He believed in justice. He believed in fairness. He believed in confronting danger. He felt a strange connection. He felt a pull towards the wolf. He could not explain it. So Tyr journeyed to Jotunheim. The path was treacherous. The mountains were stark. The air grew colder. He sought out the reports. He followed the whispers. He sought the giantess, Angaboda. He found her dwelling. It was a crude, large cave. It was carved into the mountainside. The entrance was immense. It was suitable for a giant. Tyr approached with caution. Angaboda met him at the entrance. Her eyes were wary. She was protective of Fenrir. She knew of Asgard's fear. She knew of their intentions. Yet, she allowed Tyr to enter. Inside, Fenrir lay. He was truly enormous. He filled the vast space. His head rested on a rocky outcrop. His eyes, like molten gold, watched Tyr. They held no malice. They held curiosity. Tyr felt no fear. He felt a profound calm. He knelt before the massive wolf. He extended his hand slowly. He offered no weapon. He offered no threat. He offered only respect. Fenrir sniffed the air. He lowered his great head. He regarded Tyr closely. His nostrils flared. He let out a low rumble. It was not a growl. It was a sound of inquiry. Tyr began to speak. He spoke of peace. He spoke of understanding. He spoke of his intentions. He spoke in a gentle voice. He spoke to the mighty wolf. He spoke to the beast. Angerboda watched them. She saw the strange bond forming. She saw the unusual connection. No other god had dared this. No other god had approached Fenrir in such a way. Tyr spent days there. He returned to Fenrir often. He brought him food. He brought him meat. He brought him comfort. He stroked his immense head. He scratched behind his ears. Fenrir responded. He leaned into Tyr's touch. He allowed the god's presence. He seemed to enjoy the attention. He was still a wolf. He was still wild, but he was also receptive. Tyr learned of Fenrir's nature. He learned of his rapid growth. He learned of his immense power. He saw the giant's fear. He saw Angerboda's concern. He understood the problem. He understood the prophecy's weight. He understood the danger. Yet, he saw something else. He saw a creature of instinct. He saw a creature of natural force. He saw no inherent evil. He saw a being misunderstood. He saw a being feared. He saw a being alone. Tyr felt a pang of sympathy. He knew his mission. He knew his duty, but he also felt a bond. He reported back to Asgard. He spoke of Fenrir's size. He spoke of his strength. He spoke of his hunger. He spoke of the giant's inability to control him. He confirmed the rumors, but he also spoke of Fenrir's character. He spoke of his intelligence. He spoke of his reactions. He spoke of the wolf's willingness to interact. He spoke of his own experience. The other gods listened. They were skeptical. They were wary. How could such a beast be reasoned with? How could such a monster be controlled? Odin remained silent. He observed Tyr closely. He saw the change in the god. He saw the empathy. He saw the understanding. Odin knew that Tyr spoke the truth. He knew that Fenrir was a unique challenge. The debates continued. The fear persisted. The prophecy loomed. But now they had new information. They had Tyr's brave account. They had a deeper understanding. Fenrir, meanwhile, grew larger still. His shadow stretched across the land. His presence filled the valleys. His roars echoed through the mountains. Jotunheim was his domain. He was a force of nature. He was a being of immense power. He was a creature of prophecy, and he was growing. He was maturing. He was awaiting his destiny. The Aesir knew they must act. They knew they could not delay. Fenrir's existence was a threat. His unrestrained power was a danger. They had to find a way. They had to contain him. Tyr, the brave and honorable god, had taken the first step. He had faced the wolf. He had befriended the beast. He had shown them the way. He had opened a path, but the path was fraught with peril. It was filled with uncertainty. It was a path that would demand great sacrifice. The gods knew this. They felt it in their hearts. The golden halls of Asgard were filled with grave discussion. The air was thick with tension. The weight of the prophecy pressed down on them. Fenrir's name was whispered with dread, yet a glimmer of hope remained. It was born of Tyr's courage. It was born of his compassion. It was born of his willingness to face the unknown. It was a faint glimmer, but it was there. It suggested a different outcome. It suggested a different path. It suggested a possibility of understanding, a possibility of peace, or perhaps a possibility of tragedy. Only time would tell. Only the unfolding of fate. Only the choices they made. Only the strength of their will. Only the power of the wolf. The winds of Jotunheim carried Fenrir's scent. They carried his presence. They carried his power. All of creation felt it. All of creation knew. A great wolf was stirring. A great wolf was growing. A great wolf was awakening. His destiny was intertwined. It was intertwined with the gods. It was intertwined with the world. It was intertwined with Ragnarok. And so the story continued. The tale of Fenrir unfolded. It moved towards its inevitable conclusion. A conclusion foretold by the Norns. A conclusion feared by the gods. But a conclusion that Tyr, the brave, sought to alter. He sought to understand. He sought to protect. He sought to find a different way. He sought to avert disaster. His heart was pure. His intentions were noble. His courage was boundless. He was the only one, the only god brave enough, the only one willing to face Fenrir, the only one willing to risk it all. For the sake of Asgard, for the sake of the world, for the sake of the wolf, for the sake of destiny, for the sake of peace, or for the sake of war. The future remained unwritten. The path remained uncertain. The choices remained to be made. The fate remained to be sealed. The wolf remained free. And he grew larger. He grew stronger. He grew more powerful. He grew more magnificent. He grew more terrifying. He grew more dangerous. He grew more magnificent. He was Fenrir, the wolf, the prophecy, the future, the end, and the beginning of a new chapter, the beginning of a new struggle, the beginning of a new understanding. The golden glow of Asgard seemed to dim, just a little. A quiet unease now settled upon the gods. Odin, wise and watchful, had seen what was to come. He had peered into the swirling mists of fate, and his heart had grown heavy. He saw a shadow, vast and hungry. He saw a wolf growing larger with each passing day. This creature, once a pup, now threatened the very fabric of their world. The Allfather called a council. They gathered in the great hall, Valhalla. Its vaulted ceilings usually echoed with laughter and feasting. Tonight, a solemn silence hung in the air. Thor, mighty and strong, gripped Mjolnir, his brow furrowed. Frigg, gentle and knowing, sat beside Odin, her eyes filled with concern. Tyr, brave and honorable, listened intently. Each god understood the gravity of Odin's words. Fenris, the wolf of Loki's brood, was growing too strong. His power surged, unbounded. He devoured great quantities of food. His size increased with every meal. His jaws, once small, could now snap trees like twigs. Odin spoke softly, his voice a low rumble. "We must bind the wolf," he declared. "His strength will soon be beyond measure. He poses a threat to all we hold dear." A murmur rippled through the assembly. Binding a creature of such power was no small feat. Fenris was not an ordinary beast. He was born of chaos, infused with primal strength. But how? Asked Heimdall, his keen eyes scanning the worried faces. What chain could hold such a creature? Odin turned to the divine smiths. Hephaestus, the master craftsman of the gods, was called upon. Hephaestus, with his strong hands and fiery forge, was known for his unmatched skill. He could shape metal like clay. "Fashion a chain," Odin commanded. "A chain of immense strength. One that can hold a god, if need be." Hephaestus nodded, his face grim. He knew the task was monumental. His forge, usually alive with cheerful hammering, now glowed with a serious, determined heat. For days and nights, the sounds of his labor filled the air. Hammers clanged against anvils. Sparks flew like golden rain. The bellows roared, feeding the hungry flames. Hephaestus worked tirelessly. He gathered the strongest metals from the earth's deepest veins. He sought out the toughest iron, the most resilient steel. He even incorporated fragments of ancient mountain rock. He poured his divine power into the creation. He imbued the chain with magic, with the very essence of strength. He folded and hammered, twisted and cooled. The metal sang under his touch. Slowly, painstakingly, a colossal chain began to take shape. Each link was thicker than a mighty oak tree. Each connection was fused with an unbreakable bond. The chain gleamed, dark and formidable. It was named Loading. Loading, the heavy one. Its very name spoke of its massive weight and immense power. It was a chain designed to hold the impossible. When Loading was complete, it stretched for leagues. Its weight pressed down upon the earth. Even the strongest gods struggled to lift a single link. This was a chain unlike any other. The gods looked upon Loading with a mixture of awe and trepidation. It was magnificent, truly. But could it hold Fenris? The doubt lingered in their hearts. Now came the delicate part: how to approach Fenris. The wolf was cunning, despite his wild nature. He was suspicious of strangers and even of the gods, his distant kin. Odin, ever the strategist, devised a plan. They would not reveal their true intentions. They would present the binding as a test, a game. Fenris, full of youthful pride, might fall for the deception. "We will challenge him," Odin announced. "We will say we wish to test his strength. We will praise his growing power. We will flatter his mighty form." The gods agreed. It was a risky ploy, but perhaps their only hope. They prepared their journey to Jotunheim, the land of giants, where Fenris roamed free. Jotunheim was a wild, untamed land. Towering mountains scraped the sky. Deep valleys plunged into perpetual shadow. Ancient forests stretched for endless miles. The air was raw and untamed. It smelled of pine and damp earth, of wild creatures and distant storms. The gods traveled with loading in tow, a colossal burden that strained even their divine strength. They found Fenris in a clearing near a roaring waterfall. He was even larger than they remembered. His fur was the color of twilight, his eyes like molten gold. He moved with a predatory grace, a silent hunter. He looked up as they approached, his massive head cocked. A low growl rumbled in his chest. He was curious, but wary. His fangs, long and sharp, gleamed in the dim light. Odin stepped forward, his voice calm and reassuring. "Greetings, mighty Fenris," he began. "We have come to marvel at your strength." Fenris tilted his head, a flicker of amusement in his golden eyes. He understood their words. He was intelligent, keenly aware of his own power. Thor, with a booming laugh, added, "Indeed. Tales of your prowess reach even Asgard. We hear you can snap the mightiest trees." Fenris let out a soft snort, a puff of warm air. He seemed pleased by the flattery. His tail, thick as a dragon, gave a slow, deliberate wag. "We have brought a challenge for you," Odin continued. "A test, if you will. A game to see if your strength is truly as great as the legends say." He gestured towards loading, which lay coiled like a colossal serpent. The massive chain seemed to hum with contained power. Its sheer size was intimidating. Fenris regarded the chain with interest. He sniffed at it, his wet nose twitching. He pawed at a link, his claws scraping against the unyielding metal. "This is loading," Odin explained. "A chain of unparalleled strength. No creature, mortal or divine, has ever broken free from its grasp." A glint of playful defiance entered Fenris's eyes. He seemed to relish the idea of a challenge. His confidence was boundless, his spirit untamed. "We merely wish to see if you can break it," Odin said, his voice smooth as silk. "A simple test, nothing more. If you succeed, your legend will grow even greater." Fenris seemed to consider this. He looked from the chain to the gods, then back to the chain. He was young, full of boundless energy, and perhaps a little naive. He let out a low growl, a sound that could be interpreted as acceptance. He stepped forward, his massive paws sinking slightly into the earth. He was ready for the game. The gods moved forward cautiously. They unwound loading, their combined strength barely enough to manage its immense weight. The chain snaked across the clearing. They began to bind Fenris. They wrapped loading around his powerful legs, his broad chest, his thick neck. Fenris remained still, watching them with an almost amused expression. He seemed to treat it as a silly game, a minor inconvenience. He allowed them to tighten the bonds, link by heavy link. The metal bit into his fur, but he showed no discomfort. The gods worked quickly, their faces etched with a mixture of hope and fear. They fastened the final links, securing the colossal chain around the wolf. Loading was now a dark, unyielding embrace. Fenris stood bound, completely encased in the massive chain. He was a prisoner, yet he did not seem to realize it. A low chuckle escaped his throat. "Now, mighty Fenris," Odin said, his voice betraying a hint of nervousness. "Let us see your strength." Fenris let out a huff. He shifted his weight just a little. A ripple of muscles flexed beneath his dark fur. The chain tightened, groaning under the strain. Then, with an almost casual motion, he tensed his powerful body. He did not roar. He did not struggle violently. He merely flexed asterisk. A deep, resonating asterisk crack echoed through the forest. It was the sound of metal groaning, straining to its breaking point. The earth trembled beneath their feet. The gods watched in stunned silence. Their eyes were wide with disbelief. Loading, the chain of unparalleled strength, was beginning to give way. Another crack, louder this time. A link, thick as a tree trunk, split apart. Smoke actually curled from the fractured metal. Fenris gave another, almost lazy, flex. His golden eyes gleamed with triumphant amusement. He stretched his powerful limbs, testing the bonds. With a final, thunderous asterisk snap asterisk, loading burst apart. Links flew in every direction, embedding themselves in trees, scarring the earth. The massive chain shattered into countless pieces. Fenris stood free, completely unbound. He shook his head, as if dislodging a minor annoyance. He let out a soft whine, like a dog stretching after a nap. The gods stood frozen, utterly aghast. Their faces were pale. Their plan had failed spectacularly. Loading, their hope, lay in ruins around them. The silence that followed was heavy, oppressive. It was broken only by the distant roar of the waterfall. The air seemed to grow colder, charged with a new, terrifying apprehension. Fenris looked at them, his golden eyes no longer amused. A flicker of something ancient and powerful now resided within their depths. He had shown them his true strength. He had broken the unbreakable with effortless ease. He had snapped loading as if it were a fragile thread. His power was indeed beyond measure. The gods felt a cold dread creep into their hearts. Their fear, once a quiet whisper, became a roaring torrent. Fenris was not just a threat, he was an inevitability. Odin's vision had been true. The wolf was growing, evolving. He was becoming something truly monstrous, something that could not be contained by mere chains. Thor's grip on Mjolnir tightened, his knuckles white. Even the mighty thunder god felt a shiver of fear. This creature was beyond his strength. Frigg clutched her hands to her chest, her face etched with profound worry. Tyr, the brave, felt a knot of dread in his stomach. They had underestimated him. Fenris let out a low growl, a sound that resonated deep within their bones. It was not a growl of anger, but of raw, untamed power. He had proved his point. He turned, his massive body moving with silent grace. He walked away from the shattered remnants of loading, back towards the deeper shadows of Jotunheim. The gods watched him go, powerless to stop him. The forest seemed to swallow him whole. He was a force of nature, too grand to be tamed. They were left amidst the scattered links of loading. The broken chain was a testament to their failure. It was a stark reminder of Fenris's overwhelming might. A profound sense of helplessness settled upon them. Their first attempt had been a dismal failure. Their fear had only intensified. The journey back to Asgard was somber. No one spoke. The weight of their failure pressed down upon them, heavier than loading itself. The golden glow of Asgard seemed even dimmer now. The shadow of Fenris loomed larger than ever before. He was free and growing stronger with each passing moment. The gods knew they had to try again. But what chain, what power, could possibly hold the creature who had effortlessly shattered loading? The answer remained elusive. Sleep now and dream of unbreakable bonds. Rest easy, knowing that even in the face of fear, courage will find a way. The gods will not give up. The gods gathered once more. Their faces were grim. Fear still clung to them. Yet, a new resolve hardened their gazes. They would not be defeated. They would try again. They needed a stronger chain. Loading had failed. This new chain must be unbreakable. It must hold Fenris. Their safety depended on it. The forging began anew. Sparks flew. Hammers rang. The sound echoed through Asgard. It was a mournful song. It was a song of desperation. This time, they poured more into the metal. They added more magic. They added more strength. They added more sorrow. They added more fear. The new chain was named Dromi. It was thicker than loading. It was heavier. Its links were vast. They were like mighty tree trunks. Each one was forged with great effort. Its surface gleamed dully. It was a dark, menacing gray. It promised unbreakable strength. It promised eternal confinement. It promised peace for the gods. They carried Dromi to Fenris. Their steps were heavy. Their hearts were heavier. They approached the wolf's lair. A deep dread settled over them. Fenris watched them approach. His golden eyes narrowed. A flicker of suspicion crossed his gaze. He remembered their last visit. He remembered the game. Odin stepped forward. His voice was calm. It was reassuring. It hid his fear well. "Fenris," he began, "we have another challenge." He gestured to Dromi. The chain lay coiled. It was a massive serpent of metal. It seemed to pulse with dark energy. It was truly formidable. "This chain is even stronger," Odin continued. "It is a testament to our skill. We wonder if you can break this one too." Fenris observed the chain. He sniffed the air. He detected the gods' unease. He sensed their hidden intentions. He felt a prickle of distrust. He remembered loading. He remembered its weakness. He remembered his easy victory. This chain looked different. It looked more powerful. "Another game," Fenris rumbled. His voice was deeper now. It was laced with inquiry. It held a subtle challenge. He watched their faces. Thor stepped forward. His usual boisterousness was muted. "Indeed, Fenris," he said, "a grander game. A greater test of your might." He tried to sound excited. His voice wavered slightly. He hoped Fenris would not notice. He hoped Fenris would believe him. He hoped Fenris would agree. Tyr approached the wolf. His hand rested on his sword. It was a comforting gesture. It was a deceptive one. He smiled, but his eyes were wary. "We believe this chain is truly unbreakable," Tyr stated. His voice was firm. "But you, Fenris, have surprised us before. We wish to see if you can do it again." Fenris circled Dromi. He nudged it with his nose. The metal was cold. It was unyielding. It felt different from loading. It felt more ominous. His mind raced. Why did they insist? Why these games of binding? He felt a growing unease. He felt a sense of foreboding. Yet his pride was immense. His strength was unparalleled. He had broken loading. He could surely break this one. He wanted to prove his power. "Very well," Fenris said at last. His voice was low. "I will try, but this game is growing tiresome. It is also growing suspicious." The gods exchanged glances. Relief washed over them. It was mingled with guilt. They had deceived him again. They hoped it would be the last time. They approached Fenris carefully. They moved with practiced ease. They began to wrap Dromi around him. The thick links clinked softly. The chain was heavy. It was cumbersome. It took many gods to manage it. They wrapped it around his neck. They wrapped it around his legs. Fenris stood still. He allowed them to bind him. He felt the weight of the chain. It pressed against his fur. It felt like a heavy burden. He felt the cold metal. It was a stark contrast. It was different from his warm fur. It was different from the soft earth. It was a promise of captivity. His muscles tensed. He prepared himself. He would break this chain. He would show them. He would prove his strength once more. The last link was fastened. The gods stepped back. They held their breath. A deep silence fell. It was thick with anticipation. "Now, Fenris," Odin commanded. His voice was strained. "Show us your power." Fenris roared. It was a sound of immense fury. It was a sound of raw power. It shook the very ground. The trees trembled around them. He strained against the chain. His muscles bunched. They rippled beneath his skin. He pulled with all his might. He pulled with all his rage. The links groaned. They stretched. They resisted for a moment. Then, with a deafening asterisk crack, Dromi shattered. Metal fragments flew everywhere. They scattered across the forest floor. They glinted in the dim light. They were useless pieces. They were broken promises. Fenris stood free. He shook his head. He looked at the gods. His eyes blazed. They were filled with triumph. They were filled with anger. The gods stood motionless. Their faces were pale. Despair washed over them. Their hope had been crushed. Their plan had failed again. Odin's shoulders slumped. His mighty spear, Gungnir, seemed to weigh him down. He stared at the broken chain. It was a symbol of their inadequacy. Thor dropped his hammer. Mjolnir fell with a thud. His eyes were wide. His face was etched with disbelief. His strength had been useless. Tyr looked at his hand. It was the hand that had helped bind Fenris. He felt a surge of shame. He had deceived a friend. He had failed his people. Loki, ever the trickster, felt a chill. His schemes had gone too far. Fenris was no longer a playful pup. He was a formidable foe. A profound silence descended. It was heavier than Dromi. It was colder. It was filled with the gods' defeat. It was filled with their terror. Fenris watched them. He saw their despair. He saw their fear. He saw their true intentions. The games were not games. They were attempts to imprison him. His mind reeled. He had been so trusting. He had been so naive. He had believed their words. He had believed their smiles. He had been wrong. A cold rage began to build. It simmered deep within him. It was a slow burn. It was a dangerous fire. It was a promise of vengeance. He remembered the first chain loading. He remembered its weakness. He remembered his easy triumph. He had thought it was a test of strength. Now he understood. It was a test of his gullibility. It was a test of his trust. He had failed that test. He had been too trusting. They had tried to bind him. They had tried to trap him. They had tried to take his freedom. They had lied to him. They had betrayed him. The gods were trembling. Their fear was palpable. It radiated from them. It filled the air. It was a bitter taste. It was a chilling sensation. Fenris took a step forward. The ground vibrated slightly. His eyes were fixed on Odin. His gaze was unwavering. It was full of accusation. Odin flinched. He saw the anger in Fenris's eyes. He saw the betrayal. He knew they had pushed too far. He knew their deception was revealed. The air grew heavy. It was thick with unspoken words. It was thick with shattered trust. It was thick with mounting hostility. Fenris let out a low growl. It was not a playful sound. It was a warning. It was a threat. It was a promise of retribution. The gods backed away slowly. They moved as one. Their movements were hesitant. Their faces were etched with dread. They knew their peril. They had underestimated Fenris. They had underestimated his intelligence. They had underestimated his power. They had underestimated his anger. Dromi lay in pieces. It was a monument to their failure. It was a testament to Fenris's might. It was a harbinger of doom. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The birds fell silent. The wind whispered through the leaves. It carried a chilling message. Fenris was no longer playing. The games were over. The trust was broken. The wolf was now wary. The wolf was now dangerous. His golden eyes scanned the gods. He saw their fear. He felt their desperation. He felt no pity. He felt only a cold resolve. They had tried to shackle him. They had tried to control him. They had tried to diminish him. He would not forget this. He would not forgive this. The gods retreated further. They left the broken chain behind. They left their shattered hopes. They left their growing despair. Fenris watched them go. His powerful frame remained still. His gaze was intense. It held a newfound understanding. It held a terrifying purpose. The sun began to set. Long shadows stretched across the land. They danced around the broken fragments of Dromi. They seemed to mock the gods. A chill wind blew. It rustled through Fenris's fur. He felt its touch. It was a reminder of his freedom. It was a reminder of his strength. He looked up at the sky. The stars began to appear. They were distant, in different points of light. They seemed to watch the unfolding drama. Fenris let out another growl. It was deeper now. It was filled with menace. It echoed through the quiet forest. It was a promise of what was to come. The gods were in disarray. Their plans had failed. Their fears had grown. Their enemy was stronger. Their enemy was wiser. They had to find a solution. They had to find a way. They had to contain Fenris. Their fate depended on it. The fate of Asgard depended on it. But for now, they knew only despair. They knew only fear. They knew only their crushing defeat. They knew only Fenris's growing mistrust. The wolf stood alone. He was unbound. He was unbroken. He was free. He was also deeply, profoundly angry. His wrath would be terrible. The forest settled into night. The sounds of the creatures returned, but a new tension lingered. A new awareness permeated the air. Fenris had learned a hard lesson. He would never trust them again. He would never allow himself to be bound again. He would never be deceived again. The stage was set. The conflict was clear. The stakes were higher than ever. The gods had awakened a sleeping giant. They had ignited a dangerous fire. The consequences would be dire. They would be far-reaching. They would reshape the very fabric of their world. They would determine Fenris's destiny and their own. The air in Asgard hung heavy, a silence born of fear. Odin, the Allfather, paced his great hall. His brow furrowed deeply, his mighty hand clenched. Each failed attempt to bind Fenris had left scars, not on the wolf, but on Asgard's very spirit. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that brute force was useless. Only magic, subtle and potent, could hope to contain such power. He stopped before a towering window. The golden light of Asgard seemed dim to him now. His gaze drifted to the distant mountains, their peaks sharp against the sky. A desperate plan began to form in his mind. It was a gamble, a last resort, one that required a journey to a realm few dared to tread. Svartalfheim, the home of the dark elves, the dwarves. Odin called for Skirnir, his swift and loyal messenger. Skirnir, tall and strong, arrived promptly. His face was etched with concern for his lord. Skirnir, Odin's voice was low, burdened. A task of utmost importance awaits you, one that demands courage and discretion. Skirnir bowed his head. My lord, I am yours to command. You must travel to Svartalfheim, Odin continued. His voice gained a quiet urgency. Seek out the master smiths. They are the only ones who can forge what is needed. A chain, Skirnir, but not one of iron or steel. It must be a bond unseen, yet unbreakable. Skirnir's eyes widened slightly. He understood the gravity of such a request. The journey to Svartalfheim was long and perilous. Skirnir rode Sleipnir, Odin's eight-legged steed. Sleipnir's hooves barely touched the ground. They passed through realms of mist and shadow. The air grew colder, heavier, with each league. Strange, twisted trees lined their path. Their branches clawed at the dim sky. Finally, they reached the entrance to Svartalfheim. It was a gaping maw in the side of a mountain. Darkness poured from it like a physical substance. The air here was thick, with the scent of metal and ancient magic. Skirnir dismounted, Sleipnir whinnying softly, a plume of icy breath escaping his nostrils. He led the magnificent horse into the cavern. The passage narrowed, twisting deep into the earth. Flickering torchlight cast dancing shadows. The rhythmic clang of hammers echoed from unseen depths. It was a symphony of creation. The heat grew intense, a dry, oppressive warmth. Skirnir pressed onward, his resolve unyielding. He knew the dwarves were wary of outsiders. At last, he emerged into a vast cavern. It was a city carved from stone. Furnaces roared like hungry beasts. Sparks flew like golden rain. Dwarves, short and stout, with long beards and calloused hands, twirled everywhere. Their eyes, sharp and intelligent, fixed on Skirnir. A hush fell over the smithy. Skirnir approached the eldest dwarf, a venerable figure named Ivaldi. Ivaldi's beard was braided with silver and gold. His eyes gleamed with ancient wisdom. Greetings, Ivaldi, Skirnir began, his voice resonating through the cavern. I come bearing a request from Odin, the Allfather. Ivaldi grunted, his gaze unwavering. Odin sends his messengers rarely. What troubles Asgard now that requires our craft? Skirnir explained the predicament. He spoke of Fenris, the monstrous wolf. He described the unbreakable chains that had failed. He detailed Odin's desperate need for a new kind of bond. The dwarves listened in silence. Their expressions remained unreadable. When Skirnir finished, a low murmur rippled through them. Ivaldi stroked his long beard. "Such a task is unprecedented," he rumbled. "To bind a creature of such primal force requires more than mere skill. It demands the impossible." Skirnir nodded. "Odin understands this. He knows only you possess the knowledge to achieve it. Name your price, Ivaldi. Asgard will pay it." The dwarves huddled together. They conversed in low, guttural tones. Their voices were like grinding stones. Skirnir waited patiently. The heat from the furnaces was almost unbearable. Sweat beaded on his brow. Finally, Ivaldi turned back to him. His eyes held a shrewd glint. "The price," Ivaldi stated, "is steep. We require ingredients that do not exist in your world. They are things that have no substance, yet possess immense power." Skirnir's heart quickened. This was the magic Odin had foreseen. "Name them," he urged. Ivaldi began to list them, each ingredient more fantastical than the last. First, the sound of a cat's footfall. Skirnir frowned. Cats moved silently. Next, the beard of a woman. He knew women in Asgard did not grow beards. Then, the roots of a mountain. Mountains stood firm, their roots unseen. Also, Ivaldi continued, the sinews of a bear. Bears were strong, but their sinews were tangible. The breath of a fish. Fish breathed water silently. And finally, the spittle of a bird. Birds had no spittle. Skirnir listened, astounded. These were things that defied logic, that existed only in the realm of myth. "These are the ingredients for Gleipnir," Ivaldi declared. His voice held a strange reverence. "They are the essence of the impossible. Only with them can we forge a chain that is lighter than air, yet stronger than any earthly bond." Skirnir understood. This was not a physical forging. It was a ritual, a weaving of unseen forces. "Bring us these," Ivaldi commanded, "and the craft will begin." Skirnir nodded, a new sense of purpose filling him. He knew the ingredients were symbolic. They represented the ungraspable, the ephemeral aspects of the world. He promised to return. He mounted Sleipnir and rode back through the winding tunnels. The journey back to Asgard was swift. Upon his return, Skirnir relayed Ivaldi's demands to Odin. The Allfather listened intently. A faint smile touched his lips. He understood the dwarves' riddle. The ingredients were metaphors, representing the very fabric of reality and illusion. Odin, with his vast knowledge of the cosmos, knew how to acquire them not physically, but through ancient rites and potent magic. Days turned into weeks. Odin, with the help of the wisest of the gods, performed rituals of immense power. He gathered the essence of these impossible things. He captured the silence of a cat's paw. He drew forth the unmanifested beard of a woman, a symbol of hidden strength. He extracted the unseen roots of a mountain, its primal stability. He harvested the unyielding sinews of a bear, its raw power. He collected the fleeting breath of a fish, its silent existence, and he captured the ethereal spittle of a bird, its airy essence. Each element was not a physical object, but a magical concentration, a distilled essence of its concept. These were then handed to Skirnir. Skirnir, bearing these precious, invisible burdens, returned to Svartalfheim. He presented them to Ivaldi. The dwarf examined them with keen interest. He ran his calloused fingers through the air, sensing the concentrated magic. A flicker of approval crossed his ancient face. "The ingredients are pure," he announced. "The forging can begin." The dwarves set to work with an intensity Skirnir had never witnessed. They did not use hammers or anvils in the traditional sense. Their work was a dance of magic and meticulous craft. They gathered in a secluded chamber, its walls pulsing with a soft, ethereal light. The air shimmered with unseen energies. Ivaldi and his master smiths began to weave. They did not strike metal. They chanted ancient words. Their hands moved with precise, rhythmic motions. They spun the essence of the cat's silent footfall. It became a strand of pure quietude. They braided the unseen beard of a woman. It transformed into a thread of hidden resilience. The roots of the mountain were drawn out, becoming a core of unshakable stability. The sinews of the bear were stretched, forming a band of unimaginable strength. The breath of the fish was exhaled, becoming a whisper of invisibility. The spittle of the bird was gathered, creating a shimmer of lightness. Each ingredient was transformed, not into a physical form, but into a magical property. They were then interwoven, not with needles or looms, but with pure will and ancient incantations. The dwarves hummed a low, continuous melody. It was a song of creation, of binding the impossible. Slowly, painstakingly, Gleipnir began to take shape. It was not a heavy chain. It was a ribbon impossibly fine. It shimmered with an iridescent glow. It was silken to the touch, yet possessed an undeniable, otherworldly density. It looked like a delicate strand of spun moonlight. Its color shifted from pearlescent white to a faint, ethereal gold. The ribbon was deceptively fragile in appearance. It was as thin as a thread of spider silk. It felt lighter than a feather. Yet, within its delicate form, lay the concentrated power of the impossible. It was a paradox made manifest. It was the unseen strength of silence. It was the hidden resilience of the feminine. It was the unyielding stability of the earth. The dwarves worked for days without rest. Their eyes glowed with intense focus. Their movements were precise, deliberate. The air in the chamber crackled with magic. Skirnir watched, mesmerized. He could feel the power emanating from the ribbon, a silent hum against his skin. He understood now why this chain was unique. It was not forged from earthly elements. It was woven from the very fabric of existence and non-existence. Finally, with a soft, almost inaudible sigh, Ivaldi held up the finished Gleipnir. It floated in the air, a testament to its lightness. It was approximately a handspan in width and several yards in length. It gleamed with an internal light. It seemed to pulse with a gentle, rhythmic beat. "It is complete," Ivaldi announced, his voice raspy with effort. "Gleipnir, the unseen chain. It will bind what no other can." He handed it to Skirnir. The ribbon felt cool and smooth in his hands. It was like holding a wisp of cloud, yet he sensed its immense power. It radiated an aura of ancient, potent magic. The dwarves looked weary but satisfied. Their great work was done. Skirnir bowed deeply. "My gratitude, Master Smiths," he said, his voice filled with awe. "Asgard will forever be in your debt." The dwarves merely nodded, their expressions stoic. They were artisans of the impossible. Skirnir carefully placed Gleipnir in a specially prepared silken pouch. He carried it with the utmost reverence. He knew this was Asgard's last hope. He mounted Sleipnir once more. The journey back was filled with a quiet anticipation. The moon had risen, casting long, silver shadows across the landscape. As he rode, Skirnir imagined Fenris. He pictured the wolf's immense power, its destructive fury. He then looked at the pouch containing Gleipnir, a delicate, silken ribbon. It seemed utterly incapable of restraining such a beast. Yet, he knew its true nature. Its strength lay not in its visible form, but in the unseen forces woven into its very being. He thought of the impossible ingredients. The silent footfall of a cat, a symbol of stealth and undetectable presence. The beard of a woman, representing hidden power and inner strength. The roots of a mountain embodying deep, unyielding foundations. The sinews of a bare, raw, untamed might. The breath of a fish, the essence of elusive, submerged life. The spittle of a bird, the fleeting, ethereal quality of air and freedom. All these elements, the tangible and the intangible, the seen and the unseen, had been meticulously woven into Gleipnir. It was a bond that transcended physical limitations. It was a magical tether designed to bind a magical creature. Its power lay in its paradox, its lightness, its invisibility, its deceptively fragile appearance. Finally, Skirnir arrived back in Asgard. The golden halls of Valhalla gleamed in the pre-dawn light. He went directly to Odin. The All-Father was waiting, his face etched with a quiet anxiety. Skirnir presented the silken pouch. Odin took it, his fingers brushing against the soft fabric. He opened the pouch. Gleipnir shimmered faintly in the dim light. Odin lifted it out, holding the ribbon aloft. It seemed to float effortlessly. He examined its delicate weave, its iridescent sheen. His wise eyes saw beyond its physical form. He felt the immense power contained within its deceptive lightness. A profound sense of relief washed over him. The mystery surrounding Gleipnir's creation was palpable. No one in Asgard, save Odin and Skirnir, truly knew its origins or its composition. It was a secret held close, a final, desperate gamble. The gods would soon face Fenris again. This time, they would wield a weapon unlike any other. A weapon forged from the impossible, a ribbon of pure magic, and with it, they hoped to finally bind the monstrous wolf and protect Asgard from its terrible fate. The stage was set for the ultimate confrontation. The journey to Lyngvi began. The Aesir gathered their courage. They set sail across the shimmering sea. The waves whispered secrets to their hulls. A soft breeze filled their sails. Each god felt a growing unease. Fenrir awaited them there. Lyngvi was a desolate place. It was an island of stark beauty. Jagged rocks rose from the churning water. Twisted trees clung to the cliffs. The air smelled of salt and wildness. A heavy silence hung over the land. Fenrir sensed their approach. He stood on a windswept bluff. His fur bristled in the breeze. His eyes, like molten gold, narrowed. He watched their ships draw closer. A deep growl rumbled in his chest. The gods disembarked slowly. Their footsteps echoed on the rocky shore. They walked with purpose, yet their shoulders sagged. The weight of their task pressed upon them. Odin led the procession. His face was grim. Fenrir observed their movements. He saw the anxious glances exchanged. He noted the way their hands twitched. They were nervous, he knew this. His immense size dwarfed them all. He was a force of nature. The gods stopped before him. A respectful distance was kept. Fenrir's gaze swept over them. He saw their apprehension. He saw their fear. He knew their true intentions. Odin spoke first. His voice was calm. Fenrir, mighty wolf, he began. We have come to test your strength. He held aloft Gleipnir. The ribbon shimmered in the light. Fenrir snorted. A cloud of vapor escaped his nostrils. Another trick, he growled. His voice was like grinding stone. You tried with Droma, then leading. He remembered their past deceptions. I saw through those flimsy chains. Odin nodded slowly. This is different, he insisted. This is Gleipnir, he gestured to the ribbon. It is made of impossible things. He listed the ingredients once more. The sound of a cat's footfall. He spoke each one clearly. The beard of a woman. Fenrir's ears twitched. He listened intently. The roots of a mountain, Odin continued. The sinews of a bear. He held Fenrir's gaze steadily. The breath of a fish. Fenrir's golden eyes gleamed. And the spittle of a bird, he finished for Odin. He had heard the tales. He knew the prophecy. He knew asterisk why they were here. Indeed, Odin confirmed, this ribbon is unique. He stepped forward slightly. It feels like silk. He offered it to Fenrir. It is deceptively light. Fenrir studied the ribbon. It looked harmless enough. Yet, a deep instinct warned him. His body tensed. His hackles rose slightly. He felt a profound suspicion. Why do you wish to bind me? Fenrir asked. His voice was low. What is your true purpose? He saw the guilt on their faces. Speak plainly, Aesir. Odin hesitated. He avoided Fenrir's gaze. It is merely a test, he repeated. His words felt hollow. To prove your unmatched power. He tried to sound convincing. Fenrir laughed then. It was a guttural sound. It echoed across the island. "A test," he scoffed. "You fear me, Old One." He stepped closer to Odin. "You fear what I might become." The gods shifted uncomfortably. Their faces revealed their thoughts. Fenrir saw their truth. He saw their apprehension. He saw their fear of Ragnarök. He saw their fear of his destiny. "I will not be fooled again," Fenrir declared. His voice was firm. "This ribbon feels too slight." He pointed a massive paw. "It is a trick." He was certain of it. Odin's brows furrowed. "It is not a trick," he insisted. His voice was strained. "It is magic." He tried to sound reassuring. "Then prove it," Fenrir challenged. His eyes locked onto Odin's. "Prove your good faith." He paced slowly. His tail swished, stirring the dust. "One of you must make a pledge." The gods exchanged worried glances. A ripple of fear spread through them. They knew what was coming. They dreaded his demand. No one spoke. Fenrir watched them. He saw their reluctance. He saw their growing dread. "To show me this is no deception," he continued. His voice was calm, yet menacing. "To promise me release." He paused for dramatic effect. He let the silence hang. The wind whistled around them. The waves crashed against the rocks. The tension was palpable. "One of you," Fenrir stated clearly, "must place your hand." He opened his immense maw. His teeth were like daggers. "Into my mouth." A collective gasp went through the gods. Their faces paled. Their eyes widened in horror. No one moved. No one dared. The air crackled with fear. Frigg clutched her robes. Thor gripped Mjolnir tighter. Baldur looked away in dismay. Fear was a cold hand on their hearts. They knew the risk. They knew the outcome. Odin's face was etched with despair. He looked at his sons. He looked at his warriors. No one stepped forward. The silence stretched on. It was agonizing. Fenrir watched them. His golden eyes gleamed with triumph. He had cornered them. He had exposed their fear. He had revealed their true intentions. "Is there no one?" Fenrir sneered. His voice dripped with scorn. "No god courageous enough." He slowly closed his mouth. A low growl escaped him. "Then I will not be bound." Just then a figure stepped forward. His stride was even. His posture was resolute. It was Tyr, the god of courage, the god of justice. Tyr held his head high. His eyes met Fenrir's. There was no hesitation in his gaze. There was no fear, only determination, and a profound sadness. A murmur went through the gods. "Tyr, no," Frigg cried out. Her voice was filled with anguish. "You cannot," she pleaded with him. Tyr raised a hand. He silenced her. His gaze remained fixed on Fenrir. He knew the sacrifice. He understood the stakes. He was ready. "I will do it," Tyr stated. His voice was clear. His voice was steady. It carried across the windswept island. "I will place my hand." Fenrir blinked slowly. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. He had not expected this. He had not expected such bravery. He had expected their cowardice. Tyr, Odin whispered. His voice was filled with sorrow. My son, he knew what this meant. He knew the price of their victory. Tyr approached Fenrir. His steps were measured. He walked with a solemn dignity. The other gods watched in silent dread. Their hearts pounded. Fenrir opened his mouth wide. His fangs gleamed ominously. His breath was warm on Tyr's hand. It smelled of earth and wildness. It smelled of raw power. Tyr took a deep breath. He looked Fenrir in the eye. I pledge my hand, he said. His voice did not waver. As a sign of good faith. Then, with unwavering resolve, Tyr placed his right hand. He placed it deep inside Fenrir's mouth. His fingers touched the rough tongue. His palm rested against the sharp teeth. A collective gasp escaped the watching gods. Their breaths caught in their throats. Their eyes were wide with horror. They could not look away. Fenrir's jaw remained open. His eyes were fixed on Tyr. He felt the warmth of Tyr's hand. He felt the trust, however misplaced. He felt the courage. Now, Tyr said, his voice muffled, apply the ribbon. His eyes still held Fenrir's. Make haste. Odin moved forward. His hands trembled slightly. He held Gleipnir. The silken ribbon felt impossibly light. It felt deceptively soft. He began to wrap it around Fenrir. He started with the powerful legs. The ribbon seemed to melt onto the fur. It became one with the wolf. Fenrir stood still. His massive body was tense. He felt the strange touch of Gleipnir. It was like nothing he had ever known. It was like air. It was like shadow. The ribbon seemed to flow. It coiled around his midsection. It wrapped around his chest. It wound around his neck. It was gentle, almost imperceptible. Yet, as each loop was added, a subtle change occurred. A strange energy emanated from Gleipnir. It hummed with ancient magic. It vibrated with unseen power. Fenrir felt a faint pressure. It was not a physical pressure. It was something deeper, something that resonated within his very being, something that began to bind him. He tried to shift his weight. He tried to move his legs. A faint resistance met him. It was like trying to push against smoke. It was like trying to grasp mist. Odin continued to bind him. He worked quickly now. The gods watched in stunned silence. Their eyes were fixed on the scene. They were mesmerized. Gleipnir seemed to disappear. It blended seamlessly with Fenrir's fur. It was almost invisible. Only a faint shimmer remained, a hint of its presence. Fenrir felt a growing unease. The resistance was increasing. It was no longer subtle. It was a firm, unyielding force. It was holding him. He tried to pull his legs free. He strained against the unseen bonds. His muscles flexed. His immense strength was unleashed. Yet, he could not move. A low growl escaped him. It was a growl of frustration. It was a growl of anger. It was a growl of dawning realization. He had been tricked. His golden eyes narrowed. He looked at Odin. He looked at the other gods. Their faces were grim. Their eyes held a mixture of triumph and sorrow. Fenrir roared then. It was a roar of fury. It shook the very ground. It echoed across the island. It was a sound of betrayal. He thrashed violently. His body contorted. He slammed against the invisible bonds. He strained with all his might. But Gleipnir held fast. The ribbon, soft and light, was unbreakable. It was stronger than any chain. It was stronger than any metal. It was stronger than Fenrir's immense power. He pulled and tugged. He writhed and struggled. His muscles bulged. His breath came in ragged gasps. But the binding only tightened. And as he struggled, Tyr's hand remained in his mouth. Tyr felt the vibrations of the roar. He felt the immense power of the wolf. He felt the sharp teeth. Fenrir's fury intensified. He glared at Tyr. He knew what he must do now. He knew the price of his binding. He knew the cost of their victory. With a final, desperate roar, Fenrir snapped his jaws shut. The sound was sickening. A collective cry of anguish rose from the gods. Tyr's scream was short. It was cut off abruptly. His body stiffened. His eyes remained open. They were filled with pain. They were filled with sacrifice. Fenrir pulled back his head. His mouth was stained red. He spat out Tyr's hand. It fell to the rocky ground. A severed limb, a symbol of their treachery. Tyr collapsed to his knees. His face was ashen. Blood poured from his stump. He gasped for breath. The pain was immense. The sacrifice was complete. The gods rushed to his side. Frigg sobbed uncontrollably. Odin knelt beside him. His face was etched with grief. He had won, but at a terrible price. Fenrir watched them. His eyes burned with hatred. He was bound. He was defeated, but he would never forgive them. He would never forget this betrayal. Gleipnir held him firmly. He could not move. He could not escape. He was trapped, a prisoner on this desolate island, a prisoner of their fear. The wind howled around them. It seemed to mourn with the gods. It seemed to whisper of future woes. It seemed to carry the echo of Fenrir's rage. Odin looked at Fenrir. His heart was heavy. He had secured the world for now. But he had paid a terrible price. His son had paid a terrible price. The binding was complete. Fenrir was contained. But the seeds of vengeance had been sown. The prophecy would be fulfilled. In time, the Aesir lifted Tyr gently. They carried him away from the bound wolf. His sacrifice would not be forgotten. His courage would be remembered. Fenrir watched them leave. His golden eyes burned. He was a monument to their fear, a testament to their deceit, a promise of future destruction. The sun began to set. Long shadows stretched across Lyngvi. The island was silent once more. Only the sound of the waves remained, and the silent rage of the bound wolf. The ribbon shimmered softly, catching the pale, ethereal glow of the distant stars that still lingered in the pre-dawn sky. It gleamed with an inner light, a faint, almost imperceptible silver luminescence that seemed to hum with ancient magic. Fenrir felt its gentle touch, a silken caress against his immense, shaggy fur. He stretched, his colossal frame uncoiling with the fluid grace of a mountain cat, pulling tentatively at the slender band. He expected it to snap, to shred into 1,000 useless fragments, just like the others, the thick iron chains, the braided steel cables, the mighty anchors forged by dwarven hands. His massive muscles bunched, coiling and rippling beneath his dark, wolfen fur, a testament to raw, untamed power. A low growl rumbled deep in his chest, a sound like distant thunder, but softened by amusement. He tested the slender band once more, a playful tug. Then again, with a bit more conviction, a flicker of genuine surprise, a rare emotion for the ancient wolf crossed his molten gold eyes. The ribbon did not yield. It held firm, a steadfast, unyielding tether. A faint, almost imperceptible hum, like the whispered song of unseen spirits, rose from Gleipnir. It vibrated with a strange, resonant energy, a warmth that was both alien and oddly comforting. Fenrir pulled harder this time, a powerful, deliberate heave. His massive paws, each larger than a shield, scrabbled against the dry, cracked earth of the desolate plain, kicking up clouds of fine dust. His powerful neck, thick as an ancient oak, strained, the muscles cording beneath his fur. He snorted, a plume of warm breath misting in the cool, crisp air, carrying the scent of pine and wild game. The ribbon remained unbroken, a shimmering thread against the vastness of the dawn-streaked sky. A tremor of unease, a sensation he rarely knew, ran through his colossal form. He shook his massive head, the action sending a shower of loose fur flying. He tried a different tactic, one that had always worked before. He threw his immense weight against it, a sudden, explosive lunge forward. He twisted, his body a whirlwind of power, then spun, attempting to coil around the ribbon and snap it with sheer torque. The ribbon impossibly tightened slightly, pressing into his fur with a gentle yet firm embrace. It felt cool against his skin, almost like a breath of fresh air, a sensation utterly unusual. This was not normal. This was not how the world worked. His initial amusement, that fleeting spark of playful dominance, faded completely. It was replaced by a growing concern, a cold knot forming in the pit of his stomach. He snarled, a deep, guttural sound that vibrated through the very ground. He lunged again, this time with a desperate, all-consuming might, a primal surge of fury. He roared, a sound that tore through the pre-dawn stillness, echoing across the silent, barren plain like the lament of a dying god. The ribbon held. It held him fast, held him as if rooted to the very ground, an invisible anchor against his boundless strength. A chilling realization began to dawn, a slow, creeping horror that overshadowed even his growing rage. This was no ordinary ribbon. This was no mere trick of strength, no simple illusion. This was something else entirely, something woven from the very fabric of magic, something beyond his comprehension. His molten gold eyes narrowed, darting towards the assembled gods, who stood silhouetted against the nascent light of the rising sun. Their faces, usually alight with mirth or power, were grim, etched with a solemn weight. They watched him intently, their gazes unwavering. There was no mirth there, no flicker of triumph. Only a quiet, solemn determination, a grim resolve. Betrayal. The word screamed in his mind, a deafening roar that drowned out all other thoughts. It roared through his very being, a hot, bitter tide. They had tricked him. They had lied. His trust, that fragile thread he had extended, had been shattered, broken into a million jagged pieces, scattered like dust on the wind. A cold fury, a chilling, burning inferno began to simmer. It started deep within his belly, a molten core of resentment, and spread outwards, consuming him, a dark, suffocating wave. His eyes, once playful, now burned with an infernal light. They blazed with a terrifying intensity, reflecting the nascent sun as if it were a forge. He snarled again, but this snarl was different. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated rage, a promise of vengeance. He lunged at the nearest god, a blur of fur and muscle. It was Tyr, the brave and honorable god of war, who stood closest, his expression a mixture of solemnity and a faint, lingering regret. Tyr was still extending his hand, a gesture of comfort, a final, futile attempt at reassurance. Fenrir's massive jaws, lined with teeth like obsidian daggers, snapped shut. They closed with a sickening crunch, a sound that reverberated through the stunned silence. A sharp cry, a sound of profound pain and disbelief, escaped Tyr's lips. Blood, dark and viscous, welled up, staining Fenrir's muzzle, painting his fur with a gruesome trophy. It dripped onto the dry earth, forming a small, crimson pool. Tyr stumbled back, his eyes wide with a disbelief that slowly morphed into agony. His hand was gone, severed cleanly. A clean, swift cut. A collective gasp, like the sudden exhalation of a single enormous being, went through the assembly of gods. Their faces blanched, the color draining from their cheeks, leaving them deathly pale. Horror etched their features, a profound shock that froze them in place. They watched Tyr, watched him clutch his bleeding stump, his body trembling with the aftermath of agonizing pain. A profound sorrow settled upon them, a heavy cloak of grief that seemed to darken the very air around them. Tyr, the brave, the just, the god of honorable combat. He had sacrificed his hand, sacrificed it for their safety, for the fragile hope of averting Ragnarok. Yet amidst the sorrow, another emotion stirred, a complex mix of relief and grim triumph. It was overwhelming relief, a wave that washed over them, loosening the tension that had gripped them for so long. It was triumph, cold and hard-won. Fenrir was bound. He was truly bound, held fast by the impossible ribbon. The impossible had been achieved, the terrifying prophecy averted. For now, a collective sigh, a breath held for so long, escaped their lips. A sound like a gentle wind rustling through dry leaves. Odin the Allfather stepped forward, his expression grim, his single eye fixed on Fenrir with a gaze that held both power and a deep, ancient sadness. Fenrir raged, a whirlwind of furious defiance. He thrashed against Gleipnir, a desperate, wild dance of power, struggling with all his might. The ribbon held firm, unyielding, pressing deeper into his flesh. It glowed with a faint, steady light, a soft silver pulse, and seemed to absorb his fury, to draw his boundless energy into itself. The gods moved swiftly, their movements precise and practiced. They had prepared for this, had planned for this agonizing moment down to the last detail. They had anticipated his struggles, had foreseen his inevitable rage. They produced a great chain, its links thick and heavy, forged of celestial iron, humming with a low, resonant energy. It was called Jelgja, and it was strong, unyielding, a fitting complement to Gleipnir. They fastened Jelgja to Gleipnir, securing it tightly, the metallic clang echoing sharply in the newfound silence. Fenrir roared, a sound of immense frustration and renewed rage. He bucked, he pulled, he strained against the chains, but Jelgja held. It clanged against his fur, a rhythmic, metallic symphony of his imprisonment. The sound echoed across the barren landscape, a sound of inescapable defeat, a dirge for his freedom. Next, they found a massive rock, its surface pitted and scarred by millennia of wind and rain. It was called Gjall, ancient and enormous, rising from the flat plain like a forgotten monument. It seemed to have always been there, a silent sentinel against the passage of time. They dragged Fenrir towards it, a Herculean task, even with the combined might of the gods. He resisted every inch of the way, his claws tearing at the earth, gouging deep furrows, his powerful legs digging in, churning the ground into a muddy mess. They bound Gleipnir to Gjall, wrapping the shimmering ribbon around the great stone, securing it with Jelgja. Fenrir snarled, his teeth bared, foam flecking his lips, a rabid fury in his eyes. His molten gold eyes burned with hatred, a terrifying, unquenchable fire. He strained against his bonds, pulling and pulling, his efforts so immense that the very earth trembled beneath him. Yet Fenrir was still too strong. He still posed an unimaginable threat. They needed a deeper binding, something more profound, something that would anchor him to the very world, ensuring his imprisonment was absolute, beyond any hope of escape. They found another rock, even larger than Gjall, a colossal mass of ancient stone. It was called Thvidi, said to be the deepest part of the earth, the very foundation of the world itself. They drove Thvidi deep into the ground, hammering it down with all their combined strength, their grunts and efforts echoing across the desolate plain. They then fastened Jelgja to Thvidi, pulling it taut, stretching it across the land like a giant, unyielding tether. It connected Fenrir to the core of the world, to the very bedrock of existence. He was truly bound now, held fast, imprisoned in a way no being had ever been before. Fenrir's struggles grew even more desperate, more frantic. He roared, a deafening sound that tore through the air, a primal howl of anguish and boundless fury. His voice was a tempest, shaking the very air, making the ground quake beneath him. Dust rose in choking, blinding clouds around him as he lunged, twisted, bucked, and pulled with every ounce of his immense power. Gleipnir held firm, unyielding, tightening with each movement, pressing deeper into his skin, seemingly absorbing his strength, turning his rage into its own power. Jelgja held firm, vibrating with the immense force of his struggles, a resonant hum of defiance. Gial held firm, a silent, unmoving titan. And Thvidi held firm, anchoring him to the very heart of the earth. His roars were primal, filled with an unbearable anguish, a never-ending fury. They echoed across the land, bouncing off distant, snow-capped mountains, reverberating through the very air, a terrifying symphony of his wrath. The sound was deafening, a physical assault on the senses, a terrifying testament to his unbridled rage. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated wrath, a promise of a reckoning. His struggles were immense, titanic in their scope. He strained against his bonds, his muscles bunched and rippled, a testament to his raw power. His powerful legs churned the earth, his claws gouging deep furrows, creating miniature canyons in the ground. He pulled and pulled until his breath came in ragged, desperate gasps, each one a testament to his futile efforts. Foam flew from his mouth, thick and white, tinged with dark, crimson blood, a gruesome testament to his efforts. His struggles were so great, his efforts so desperate, that the spittle flew from his jaws, landing on the parched ground. It began to pool, then to flow, a small rivulet at first, then a torrent. It carved a path through the dry earth, becoming a river born of his rage, a river of his unending frustration. It was called Van, and it flowed from his mouth, endlessly, a stark, flowing testament to his fury. The gods watched him, their faces solemn, their expressions etched with the weight of their actions. They felt a pang of pity, a flicker of regret for the magnificent beast they had shackled. But it was quickly overshadowed, quickly pushed aside by the overwhelming relief, by the profound knowledge that they had saved their world, saved it from the immediate threat of destruction. Fenrir continued to struggle. He struggled for days, his roars echoing across the barren land. He struggled for weeks, his fury never waning, his eyes still burning with hatred. He struggled for months, his efforts undiminished. The river Van grew wider, it grew deeper, becoming a rushing torrent, carving canyons through the ancient land, a permanent scar of his imprisonment. He was a prisoner, a mighty beast bound by an impossible ribbon, chained to the earth. His rage was boundless, his hatred eternal. He would never forgive them, never forget this profound betrayal. He would wait, he would bide his time, his fury a burning ember, ready to ignite. And the gods knew. They knew this was not the end. They knew his binding was temporary, a mere delay. They knew a day would come, a day when the chains would break, a day when Fenrir would be free, a day when the world would face his wrath, a wrath that had only intensified with his imprisonment. But for now, for this precious moment, they had peace, they had safety. The world was safe. The sun still shone, its golden rays illuminating the barren plain. The stars still glittered in the vast, endless sky. And Fenrir, the mighty wolf, roared his defiance, a constant, guttural challenge. He roared against his bonds. He roared against his fate. His ominous snarls echoed across the silent world, a terrifying promise. A promise of future destruction. A promise of Ragnarok. The heavy chains, forged in the heart of a dying star by the cunning hands of the darkest dwarves, held Fenrir fast. His immense body, a mountain of muscle and matted fur, strained against them. Gleipnir, deceptively thin as a strand of finest silk, yet stronger than any iron known to gods or giants, bit into his fur, a subtle, unyielding pressure that tightened with every twitch of his magnificent frame. He roared again, a sound that ripped through the very fabric of the air, tearing at the silence of the desolate island. The sound echoed across the craggy, obsidian cliffs, bouncing off the ancient, wind-scoured stone with a terrifying resonance. The ocean waves, usually a tumultuous symphony, seemed to hush in response, drawing back from the shore as if in deference to his primal anguish. His jaws snapped, a futile gesture that produced a thunderous clap of air. He lunged forward, a desperate surge of raw power, the invisible bond held, unyielding. He twisted, a spiraling vortex of frustration. It held tighter still, digging deeper into his flesh. The very earth beneath him trembled slightly, a sympathetic tremor that ran through the bedrock. His massive paws, each claw as long and sharp as a Viking longsword, clawed at the unyielding rock, gouging deep furrows and sending showers of black shingle into the air. Yet, for all his legendary strength, he could not break free. A low growl, a sound of immense, simmering frustration, rumbled deep in his throat, vibrating through the very air around him. His powerful tail, thick as the trunk of an ancient oak, thrashed from side to side, whipping up spray from the cold, turbulent sea, and carving frothing white lines in the dark water. His eyes, once burning with an untamed fury that mirrored the wild fires of Muspelheim, now held a glint of profound despair, a recognition of his impossible plight. He was trapped. He knew it with a chilling certainty that settled deep in his beastly heart. His strength, a force of nature legendary among all creatures of the 9 realms, was utterly useless here, rendered impotent by the potent, intricate magic of the dwarves, woven into the very fibers of Gleipnir. The silence of his imprisonment began to settle, heavy and suffocating, like a blanket woven from the darkest night. Only the rhythmic, mournful roar of the ocean remained, a constant dirge for his lost freedom. From his gaping maw, a stream of thick, viscous drool began to flow, a river of his contained rage, a physical manifestation of his boundless frustration. It pooled at his feet, shimmering darkly on the rough stone, then snaked across the rocky ground, a slow, inexorable current. The liquid grew wider, deeper, carving a distinct path towards the restless sea. This was the river Van, born of his struggle, a testament to his eternal confinement. It would forever mark his lonely prison, its dark waters flowing ceaselessly, a constant, murmuring reminder. They spoke not of vanquished power, but of power contained, held in an agonizing stasis. The river murmured a mournful tune, a lament that sang of a mighty beast, forever bound, forever yearning for release. The gods watched him for a long, quiet moment, their forms silhouetted against the pale, indifferent sky. They stood on the shore, their faces grim, etched with a complex tapestry of emotions. Relief slowly washed over them, a wave of quiet, profound relief that settled deep in their bones. But it was tinged, undeniably, with sorrow, a deep ache for the terrible cost of their victory. The air was heavy with unspoken words, with the weight of difficult choices. Odin's gaze was fixed on the mighty wolf, his brow furrowed in deep thought. He saw not just a monstrous threat, but a victim, a creature born of unavoidable prophecy, bound by the unyielding threads of fate. He felt the immense weight of his own decisions, the burden of leadership. Thor stood tall, his mighty hammer Mjolnir resting silently at his side, its polished surface reflecting the subdued light. He exhaled slowly, a deep, shuddering breath that seemed to carry the weight of the world. His usual boisterous demeanor, his ready laugh and thunderous voice, was utterly subdued, replaced by a quiet solemnity. He felt the sting of injustice, a raw, uncomfortable sensation. This was a necessary act, he knew, a grim imperative for the safety of all. But it was a cruel one nonetheless. His mighty hand rested on the cool, smooth handle of his hammer, his knuckles white. He wished, with a profound ache in his heart, that he could have found another way, a path that did not involve such a brutal binding. But prophecy had been clear, its pronouncements as unyielding as the bedrock beneath their feet. Freyja, ever compassionate, her heart a fount of empathy, looked away, her gaze drifting towards the distant horizon. Her heart ached for the imprisoned beast, a pang of shared despair. She could feel the raw, animal despair radiating from him, a tangible wave of sorrow that seemed to chill the very air. The world, in that moment, seemed a little colder, a little less vibrant. A veil of sadness, thin but pervasive, descended upon the scene, dimming the very colors of the landscape. Even the sun, usually so bright and life-giving, seemed to dim slightly, its light muted by the heavy atmosphere. Her thoughts, ever quick and empathetic, turned to Tyr, the valiant god of justice. Tyr stood quietly, his arm a bloody stump, the raw wound already beginning to congeal in the cool air. He felt no physical pain now, only a strange, profound numbness that had settled over him like a shroud. His face was pale, almost ashen, but his eyes were clear, reflecting a quiet strength and an unwavering resolve. He looked at Fenrir, then at his fellow gods, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. A quiet, almost luminous strength emanated from him, a sense of deep acceptance. He had known, in the quiet chambers of his heart, that his sacrifice was coming. The Norns, Those ancient weavers of destiny had spun this thread long ago, a predetermined strand in the tapestry of his life. He accepted his fate with an unshakable dignity, a true warrior's grace. "It is done," Odin said, his voice low, a gravelly whisper that nonetheless carried across the somber gathering, resonating with authority and finality. "The prophecy is fulfilled for now." He looked at Tyr, his gaze filled with profound respect, a silent tribute to courage. "Your courage, Tyr, will be remembered through the ages, a beacon of selflessness." His words were sincere, deeply felt, devoid of all political pretense. "You have saved us all from a terrible fate." Tyr inclined his head slightly, a gesture of humble acceptance rather than subservience. "It was my duty, Allfather." His voice was calm, unwavering, imbued with a quiet conviction. The safety of Asgard, and indeed all the 9 realms, comes first. He looked down at his missing hand, a physical manifestation of his sacrifice. A small price to pay for such a great cause. A faint, weary smile, tinged with a quiet pride, touched his lips. It was a smile of acceptance, of a burden willingly borne. Frigg, the queen of Asgard, stepped forward, her regal bearing softened by a deep maternal concern. Her eyes, usually sparkling with wisdom, were now filled with a profound sorrow. She gently touched Tyr's shoulder, her touch a balm of comfort. "Your sacrifice is great, dear son." Her voice was soft, compassionate, a tender melody in the stark landscape. "We will care for you and ensure your healing." She looked at the raw, bloody stump, her heart aching with a mother's pain for her brave child. Heimdall, ever watchful, his senses attuned to the very vibrations of the cosmos, surveyed the scene with his keen, all-seeing eyes. He missed nothing, not the smallest tremor of emotion, not the faintest shift in the cosmic balance. He saw the profound relief, the lingering sorrow, the quiet strength that permeated the air. He felt the subtle shift in the cosmic balance, a slight realignment of the threads of fate. The world was now safe, for a time, a temporary reprieve from chaos. But the future remained uncertain, shrouded in the mists of destiny. The intricate threads of fate, though momentarily stable, were ever shifting. Loki, ever the trickster, stood apart from the others, a figure of enigmatic detachment. A complex, unreadable expression flickered across his face, a fleeting shadow of something deeper. He watched his son's struggles, the raw, animalistic agony of his binding. A flicker of something. Was it pity? Was it regret for his own part in this grim play? Moved in the depths of his eyes, a brief, uncharacteristic vulnerability. Then it vanished, replaced swiftly by his usual sardonic mask, a carefully constructed facade of indifference. He had played his part, sown the seeds of chaos, and now the harvest was bitter. His heart, if he possessed such a thing, was a tangled knot of contradictions, a labyrinth of conflicting emotions. The gods began to turn away, their mission accomplished, their faces etched with the day's grim events. They walked slowly back to their ships, their footsteps heavy on the rocky shore. The mood was somber, yet resolute, a quiet determination born of facing a grave threat. They had overcome it, for now, but at a profound cost. The The sound of Fenrir's roars, once deafening, slowly faded, becoming a distant, mournful echo carried on the wind. The wind, a silent messenger, carried it across the vast, in different waves. A whisper of a beast's agony. The ships, sleek and silent, sailed back towards Asgard, cutting through the dark waters with barely a ripple. The journey was quiet, reflective, a time for introspection. There were no joyous shouts, no triumphant songs of victory, just the rhythmic creak of the timbers, the soft splash of the oars in the water, and the distant cry of seabirds. Each god carried their own thoughts, their own burdens, their own replaying of the day's harrowing events. The raw terror of Fenrir's unleashed power, the desperate struggle to bind him, the profound sacrifice of Tyr. When they reached Asgard, the golden city seemed different, subtly altered by the events of the day. A quiet solemnity had settled upon it, a hush that muted its usual vibrant energy. The bustling activity that typically filled its streets was subdued, the laughter and music replaced by a pervasive quiet. The air felt heavy, pregnant with meaning, as if the very stones of the city held their breath. The news of Fenrir's binding had spread like wildfire, carried on the whispers of the wind, and the people knew of Tyr's incredible courage, of the terrible price paid for their safety. The gods disembarked, their faces stern and unyielding, their weariness visible in their movements. They walked through the silent streets, the golden light of Asgard seeming to dim around them. People bowed their heads in deep respect, their expressions a mixture of awe and sorrow. They murmured words of gratitude, their voices hushed with reverence. Tyr, especially, was met with a profound sense of awe and sorrow, a quiet understanding of his immense sacrifice. He was truly a hero, his name already being whispered in legends to come. Odin convened a council in Valhalla, the great hall usually filled with the boisterous shouts of feasting warriors. Tonight, it was quiet, the usual revelry absent. The gods sat around the long, polished table, their faces illuminated by the flickering torchlight. The air was thick with reflection, with the weight of recent events. They discussed the day's events, dissecting every moment, every cost. They spoke of the uneasy peace that now settled over the realms, a peace bought at such a high price. Fenrir is bound, Odin reiterated, his voice resonating through the solemn hall, each word a stone dropped into a still pond. But not destroyed. He lives, and his rage will simmer, growing stronger with every passing moment of his imprisonment. He looked at each of them, his gaze distant, seeing beyond the present moment. His time will come again, as the prophecies foretell. Frigg spoke, her voice calm and clear, a soothing counterpoint to Odin's grim pronouncement. The Norn's prophecy remains, Allfather. She looked at Odin, her husband, her eyes filled with a quiet wisdom. He is destined to break free, to herald the twilight of the gods. Her words hung in the air, a stark, undeniable reminder of their ultimate fate. Heimdall nodded gravely, his all-seeing eyes focused on a distant, unseen point. The threads are woven unchangeable. His voice was low, resonant, carrying the weight of cosmic knowledge. Ragnarok awaits us all, a destiny we cannot escape. His eyes, ever seeing, looked far into the future, discerning the faint outlines of the coming twilight, the final battle. Tyr sat among them, his arm now expertly bandaged, a stark white against his pale skin. He listened to their words, the grim pronouncements of fate, without a flicker of regret for his actions. He had done what was necessary, what was right. He understood the future's grim promise, the inevitability of the wolf's return. But for now, there was peace, a fragile, temporary peace that was worth every drop of blood. The uneasy calm descended upon Asgard, a quiet that was not truly peaceful, but merely a postponement. Fenrir was contained, but not eliminated. His very existence was a constant shadow, a lurking reminder of what was to come, a ticking clock in the heart of the cosmos. The prophecy echoed in their minds, a persistent whisper of inevitability that permeated every thought, every decision. Life in Asgard resumed, but subtly changed, forever marked by the binding of the great wolf. The gods carried the weight of knowledge, the burden of their shared fate. They knew their destiny was intertwined with the beast, that the wolf would one more time roam free, bringing ruin in his wake. They lived with the quiet understanding that this was merely a delay, a brief respite before the final storm. Tyr, though maimed, remained resolute, his spirit unbroken. His courage became legendary, whispered in the halls of Valhalla and sung by skalds across the realms. He continued to serve Asgard, his strength of will unwavering, an embodiment of duty and selflessness. He was a symbol of sacrifice, a testament to the enduring spirit of heroism. His story inspired many, instilling courage in the hearts of gods and mortals alike. And on the desolate island, Fenrir remained, a monument to rage and confinement. He struggled against his bonds, endlessly, tirelessly, his immense power a constant thrum against the magical restraint. His roars still echoed across the water, though now more faint, more distant, a haunting lament. The river Van, born of his tears and fury, flowed ceaselessly from his mouth, winding its way to the sea, a dark, living testament to his unending agony. He was a prisoner, but not broken. His fury burned, undimmed, a hellfire in his heart. He waited patiently for his time, for the day the bonds would finally snap. The stars above, ancient and indifferent, shone down on him, witnessing his lonely vigil. The moon, a pale orb in the night sky, cast long, shifting shadows across the desolate island, making the crags and rocks seem to writhe. The wind whispered ancient tales through the gnarled trees, tales of power and prophecy, tales of gods and monsters locked in an eternal struggle, tales of fate, unyielding and inescapable, guiding all beings to their destined ends. So the story of Fenrir ends for now. His binding was a triumph, a necessary act of survival. But it was also a profound tragedy, a cruel fate imposed upon a creature of prophecy. It was a moment of peace, hard-won and fragile, a temporary delay in the inevitable march of destiny. It reminds us that courage shines brightest in the face of impossible odds. It reminds us of the profound power of sacrifice, of choosing the greater good. It tells us that some fates are fixed, woven into the very fabric of existence, waiting to unfold. And even in silence, even in the quiet of the night, stories live on. They echo through the ages, carried on the whispers of the wind and the murmur of the waves. They teach us about ourselves, about the depths of the human and godly spirit. They speak of strength and weakness, of courage in the face of overwhelming fear. They remind us of the cycles of life, of birth and death, of creation and destruction. They remind us of the enduring nature of myth, of how these tales shape our understanding of the world. The distant howls of the wolf, a mournful echo across the water. The silent vigil of the gods, burdened by knowledge. The flowing river, born of rage and sorrow. All are part of a grand tapestry, a story woven from light and shadow, hope and despair. A timeless tale, softly told under the watchful stars. Now, close your eyes, little one. Drift into dreams, carried on the gentle currents of these ancient stories. Let the tales guide you through the night. Rest deeply, peacefully, until the dawn. If these whispers brought you rest, you're welcome to subscribe for more calm tales. A gentle, like also guides fellow night owls here.